From the top of the Big Sable Point Lighthouse, we're 100 feet in the air. I'm Peter Mantane, and with me today is Keeper Dave Dietrich. And we're up here. We're going to give you a virtual tour of the Big Sable Point Lighthouse, and we're really looking forward to having you join us. And we are in the what they call the watch tower, where the keeper would keep watch on the flame at night. And right above us then is our Fresnel lens. And back in 1867, when the tower was built, the Fresnel lens was a third order Fresnel lens. Big Sable Point Lighthouse was built in 1867. It was built 112 feet tall to the top of the spur and the tower. And so we are 100 feet above. And where I'm sitting on the ladder that is in between the watchtower and then the lantern platform where they would service the light. As I was saying about the third order Fresnel lens, there was a third order Fresnel lens that was installed at the top of the pedestal here at Big Sable Point. And you could see that flame 17 miles out into Lake Michigan.
What's interesting is that 17 miles is about as farthest you could see it anyway because of the curvature of the earth.
Right.
You always figure it's 20 miles on maximum.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, third order lens, that's 3¼ feet wide. Mm-hmm. And 5½ feet tall, so it's a rather large lens.
Mm-hmm.
Originally it was supposed to be a fourth order lens.
Mm-hmm.
During the Civil War, the lens got waylaid to some other lighthouse, so mm-hmm. they had to procure a third order lens for this lighthouse. And it came from France. It's Augustus Fresnel back in 1820 invented this lens, and the lenses have been the mainstay for most of the lighthouses on Great Lakes and around the coast of the United States.
These are things that helped the keepers keep air flowing into the flame to keep the flame burning. As we said, we had a lard oil flame first, and then a kerosene flame after that as it progressed. And now our lens is electric. We talked about it being a third order lens. That third order lens now has been replaced by a very small plastic lens, which you've seen in the video here. And under that little plastic lens is a little LED light. And the Coast Guard, when they put that in 2015, said that they would see us in 3 years. So it's about a 3-year life.
Yeah, thank goodness we don't use lard oil anymore.
Right, yes, that's for sure.
That oil was difficult to use, and mm-hmm. in the wintertime it would get hard, mm-hmm. and quite often they'd have to heat it in order to supply the wicks. Originally it was one of those funk lanterns at mm-hmm. the top. It was a 3-wick funk lantern, and the wicks were circular in size, mm-hmm. and each wick had a separate twick that you could turn mm-hmm. to raise it and lower it. Mm-hmm. So it was used for many years until one of the hydraulic units came in view, and it was similar to a Coleman lantern. They used kerosene, which was very volatile. Mm-hmm. So they didn't keep the kerosene inside the lighthouse any longer. They had their own oil house and outside of the lighthouse. Sure. But that was fairly successful mm-hmm. up until it was electrified in 1949. The kerosene type lamp put out quite a candle power. Mm-hmm. Like most of the Coleman lanterns, however, the mantles were fairly fragile, so they had to be very careful with the mantles. Mm-hmm. So that eliminated having to bring a lot of oil here when the lighthouse was electrified in '49, with the exception of the fact that the first electrification was produced by a generator
Mm-hmm.
for almost 10 years until there was a line that came in from Ludington.
Sure.
To not only electrify the light, but also the keeper's house.
Sure.
Because in 49 they didn't even have electricity or running water. They didn't have inside plumbing. They only had outhouses at the time, so it was fairly primitive for that time of the year.
As we walk out on the gallery deck walkway, we get a wonderful view of the Nordhaus National Dune Forest and the Ludington State Park. Even though we're near the top of the tower, there is no man-made structures easily visible. This is much like the views seen by the first lighthouse keepers. You will notice an access road which leads to the light. The road was first completed in 1933. Until then, most of the supplies to the lighthouse were brought in by the lighthouse tender ship. Traveling to town is approximately 9 miles to Ludington, so the keepers were isolated. Lou Venanter was assistant keeper at Big Sable from 1912 through 1923 and head keeper from 1923 through 1936. His niece, Dorothy Anderson, had wonderful memories of visiting her aunt and uncle at the light station. She remembers that she and her brother would walk to the Coast Guard station in Ludington. The station manager would call Uncle Lou at the light. Uncle Lou would get in his boat and come and get them both to bring them out to the lighthouse. She also remembers walking to town with her aunt, which was an 18-mile round trip, because her aunt got sick riding in the boat, so her aunt would rather walk than ride the boat to town. Another niece, Annie Fearson, remembers Uncle Lou's Model T Ford with the big balloon tires on it. It would go through the sand like a dune buggy. She did remember one time they got stuck and had to carry supplies from the car through the dunes that day. As we look around the gallery walkway, we can see the original bricks, which are visible here. The steel cladding ends at the bottom of the gallery walkway. There is another work deck walkway above the gallery deck, and we can see the hand grips on the top of the second walkway. This enabled the keeper to hold on to something while cleaning the outside of the windows. The daily routine of the lighthouse keeper wasn't difficult or demanding. Often it was tedious and boring. The light had to be maintained in a constant state of readiness. The keepers had a manual called Instructions to the Light Keepers. In this manual, it said the main responsibility of the keeper was to keep the lamp burning from sunset to sunrise. In addition, they had to clean and polish the lenses, check and fill the oil lamp, dust the framework of the light, and trim the wicks. If the light had an assistant keeper, it was his job to clean the brass and copper fixtures of the light lens and all the tools in the lantern room, as well as the walls, floors, and balconies. He had to sweep the tower stairs, landings, doors, window recesses, and passages from the lantern room to the oil room. There are Roman numerals etched into the railing floor of the watchroom gallery deck, and these numbers were etched at the Milwaukee Lighthouse Depot where the tower was manufactured. This allowed the correct sections of the gallery to be aligned when assembled on site. We can also see the half-bell-shaped objects which coincide with the air draft grates inside the white watchroom. Below us on the beach, we see the replica of the fog signal building, which was built in the 1940s. This was built to replace the original fog signal building that was built in 1909 that was washing into the lake. Life could be rather isolated at the lighthouse. With little to do but hunt, fish, and read, the hardest problem for the keeper's families was not physical or social isolation. It was the annoying sound of the fog signal when it was in operation. The keepers got used to the noise because they had to, but the wives and children complained more about the fog signal operation than anything else at the light station. It was hard to hold a conversation, read a book, or sleep when the signal was in operation. And at Big Sable, it was often in operation for several days and nights at a time. Les Mervatan, son of one of the last lighthouse keepers, recalls that one day the Coast Guard called to see if the signal was on. He had to put the phone down and listen to find out that it was on. So some did get used to listening to it. As I mentioned before, the Big Sable Point Light Station was built in 1867. The tower was constructed of soft Milwaukee cream brick. The tower walls are 5 feet thick at the bottom and 2.5 feet thick at the top. By 1898, the district inspector reported that the tower at Big Sable Point was in poor condition. The soft brick of the tower was deteriorating from being sandblasted out on the windy point. In the spring of 1900, metal cladding was fabricated and installed around the tower at Big Sable. The space between the tower and the brick was then filled with cement, and the windows were replaced by metal portholes. The tower was then painted white with a large black band so sailors could distinguish the tower from the surrounding sand dunes. The black and white striped tower became the day mark of the Big Sable Point Light Station. Standing out on the watch deck, we can also see the seawall that protects the light station from the shoreline erosion. Originally, the lighthouse was built 500 feet from the shoreline. By 1909, the distance had been reduced to 385 feet. In 1977, and then again in 1986, the lake got as close as 4 feet from the tower. In 1986, the Coast Guard installed a metal tower in the sand dunes just south of the Big Sable Point property. This new metal structure was to become the new warning light when the Big Sable Point Tower was washed into the lake. That same year, 1986, a local group of citizens formed to save the tower from falling into Lake Michigan, taking matters into their own hands by sandbagging and moving sand and rock around the property. They worked until the tower was no longer in danger of collapsing into the Lake Michigan. Finally, in the early 1990s, permission was granted to build a new 150-foot seawall in front of the lighthouse. In 1993, the Coast Guard removed the metal tower from the sand dune south of the property, and in 2012, the group, now known as the Sable Point Lighthouse Keepers Association, added another 150 feet to the seawall for more protection for the Big Sable Point Light Station. Now, why don't we head downstairs to take a look at the rest of the station?
Well, now we're inside of the service room. And at one time, they used to have a potbelly stove in here for heat during the wintertime. Assumably, the exhaust would be out one of the windows, but trying to keep this area warm during the wintertime. And of course, the shipping season would end usually around the first or second week of December, so they probably didn't have to heat and the light was off. But then there was a period when the light was on all the time.
Yes, right. Yeah.
During the year, so they probably had to keep heat in there.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a very small room, and they do have an area here where it shows some of the equipment. So it's nice that we have some of these artifacts, because there were a lot of tools that the keepers had to use.
Yes.
To clean the brass and clean the light. I'm not sure they used Windex back in those days.
No, I don't think so.
No, probably didn't exist. But they had to keep the stairs clean. You know, and they had to sweep it. And of course, when you look at the stairs, they're made out of cast iron. They were made in sections, and the center pole would help to support not only the upper structure, but also help to support the weight of the stairs itself. It goes all the way down to the bottom. And this is unique to this lighthouse, because there are some lighthouses that have open areas where if you had a clock mechanism, the weight would be right in the center. But this one is not like that. And it's they're beautifully done. They usually have holes in the grates that helps to for airflow, and when they're sweeping, the sand goes right through the bottom. So you have to be careful when you're cleaning here.
One of the other things that the keepers needed to clean was the lens, and they cleaned that lens daily. The lens being lard fired or kerosene fired, the lenses would get sooty, and
Particularly
the glass,
lard,
would get sooty, and so every day the lens had to be cleaned. As we're in the watchtower, one of the big questions that always comes up is why the trap doors? That we have trap doors, and we have a trap door that we walk through when we were at the service room, here at the service room, and then at the watch room up above, there's a trap door. And what happens is that the air from the air from down below creates a tunnel effect. And so if those doors were not closed, at least one of those doors wasn't closed while the keeper was tending the light, and the light was on, the light would blow out.
And from what I had read, the keeper used to have a mirror at the base in his office.
Okay.
Instead of having to go outside, maybe if the weather was inclement or whatever, and he was able to look through the mirror and see if the light is still lit.
Sure.
Obviously, going all the way to the top can be quite a chore, but that's part of his job.
One of the granddaughters that was interviewed back in the early 2000s said that her best memory was sitting up in the watchtower with Grandpa playing cards.
Oh.
And or playing cards here in the service room, and then he would send her up to the watchtower to take a look and make sure that the light was still on, and he'd come back and Grandpa had changed the cards. So, so she said Grandpa liked to cheat. But you're right. The mirror in the cottonwood tree. I've talked to a couple of people about that, and apparently back in the 30s was the first keeper that put the mirror in the tree, in the cottonwood tree, so that he could look out his bedroom window, because that front room was the master bedroom, and he could look out that bedroom window and see if the light was on, or if they were playing cards or something, he'd send one of the kids outside just to look at the mirror to make sure that it was on as well. So, and I had spoke to Henry Varnum, who was his stepson, had visited a couple of years ago, and I asked him about the mirror, and he said, "Oh yeah, my dad had a mirror at Little Sable too." So,
Oh, that's interesting.
and he said that was nothing new when we came to Big Sable to see that mirror in the tree. So we knew that what that was all about. So. They replaced the one here.
Well, they replaced the one here in 1949. It was a generator.
Right.
And that went on for about 9 years at this lighthouse until a line came in from Ludington. And they had one, I believe it was a 500 watt bulb at the top. It put out 7,300 candle power, which was a nice bright light. 18 miles in the lake. And you have to keep in mind that anything past 20 miles you can't see the light anyway because of the curvature of the earth. But having it electrified meant that the keepers were not as important as what they used to do. There were no burners to clean or wicks to trim or any glass to clean. The Fresnel lens didn't have to be polished like it had in the past. So electrification was a great thing, but in one way, and a sad thing in another. Well, this is the lens pedestal, the original one that used to support the third order lens. And of course, that would have been the jewel of this lighthouse. Now it's just a plastic canister, which is not so dramatic when you're up there. I remember holding on holding the little photo sensor so the thing would go on.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then you can do that. But yeah, it's nice that at least we have the pedestal. And if you wanted to see the lens, it's at the new Maritime Museum in Ludington. It's a beautiful museum to visit. They have a lot of things there. And the lens is
Very nicely displayed.
nicely displayed, nice and clean, and it really gives you a feel for what it might have looked like if it were at the top of the tower.
Welcome to the Big Sable Point Keeper's Quarters. When you come to Big Sable Point, this is the way you will enter. You'll enter through the front door. This is the original Keeper's Quarters. The original keeper and his wife lived downstairs here. And then we'll go upstairs in a few minutes and we'll see where the assistant keeper and his wife lived. And then farther on, as the light station progressed, we had a third family also, and so they had to add on to the lighthouse at that point. So we're going to walk right in here. We're going to walk right into the living area. This was the living area. And our first keeper was Alexander Alonzo Hyde, and he was a keeper here at Big Sable. He was the first keeper. He had come and was a farmer in the Mears, Michigan area. And during the Civil War, he became a preacher who went around with a tent ministry. And during that tent ministry, he drummed up a lot of support for the Civil War and recruited a lot of men for the Civil War effort from Michigan and sent them off to war. And his token from Congress was to become the first lighthouse housekeeper at the Big Sable Point Lighthouse. And he served here with his wife for 2 years, and then his son and his son's wife lived upstairs. And they lived here for 2 years as well as assistant keepers, and then took over as head keeper. And his son at that point had his wife made assistant keeper so they could have the whole quarters to themselves. And so it was husband and wife as keeper and assistant keeper here. Right where I'm standing is the living room area. It's our gift shop now. And you can see where Mr. Hyde's picture is hanging. You see the block wall, and by that block wall was where the potbelly stove went out, vented out through the chimney there. And so this is a very comfortable living area here. So this is the master bedroom, and we referenced the cottonwood tree that is right outside the window there, which is where they had the mirror, so that reflected whether the light was on or not, so they could look out the bedroom window. Keeper Bird and his wife were very good friends of the Native Americans that inhabited the area here. And in fact, the Native Americans would come and they would sit by the potbelly stove and in fact spread out on the floor on cold nights to keep warm here. Of course, they also brought venison and some of the other game that they had caught, because Keeper Bird's wife apparently was a very good cook, and so they liked the fixings. Keeper Bird and his son had gone into the town of Lincoln, which is before you get to Ludington. It was a logging town, to get supplies. Coming back, the ice had thawed, and they were stopped by the Native Americans, who informed them that the ice was too soft for the wagon, and that if they went over the ice, that they would fall through. And so Keeper Bird said, oh, he credits his life and his son's life to the being saved by the Native Americans. Keeper Bird's wife was a wonderful seamstress. She worked with the Native Americans, teaching them sewing. And so one day she had an apron that all the Native Americans really kind of admired, although it was an apron that had holes in it, and she had put patches over it and to cover the holes. And anyway, one of the ladies came, and she was so excited that she had made an apron that looked just like the keeper's wife's apron. And sure enough, it was the same apron that the young lady had made, and it had patches exactly the same place where Keeper Bird's wife did. From the living area, here is the kitchen area, and again, we use the same chimney in the back. That chimney has not been uncovered yet, but it's the same chimney as before. So the potbelly stove sat over here in this area. Of course, we had our sink area over here. This room off from the hallway, as you come in, ended up being the lighthouse keeper's office, but originally it was the storage room for the lard. And you can see just down the tunnel there that the stairway to the tunnel that connects the house to the tower, and so they had great access to it there. I know Dave had talked about before the library that lighthouse keepers brought in, and so we do have a sample of the library in here, and we have some other artifacts in here. So when you come to visit us, this is one of the rooms that you'll come into. And in our hallway, we have a lot of lighthouse models, and so we also have various lights. The one light that was up in our tower before the LED light, and it was this one. So that came out of our tower upstairs. So this replaced the original Fresnel lens, and then we went to the small one that's up there now. When electricity was brought in, that went underneath the plastic here. And then they rotated to something like this. And the unique thing about this is that if this one burns out, then it automatically switches to the next light so that the keepers don't have to constantly be up there. And so after 6 lights are extinguished, then the keepers would go and change the light bulbs. It went from these light bulbs to the halogen light bulbs.
Right. And those 2 lights up there, boy, if they were in the canister, you'd have a bunch of melted plastic.
Yes, right, yeah. So that was under the Fresnel lens.
Under the Fresnel lens, yeah.
As we came up the stairs, this is where the assistant keeper would be. We have 2 bedrooms here originally. Originally over here, we had, this is where the kitchen was originally, and then this is where our living area was. So you can see that it's been reconfigured. It's been reconfigured a couple of different times, but originally, and then it stopped right there at the end of the living room and the kitchen area is where the original assistant keeper's quarters stopped. Now, after the lighthouse was expanded, then this became the upstairs for the keeper. The head keeper and his wife. If they had children or something like that, they would stay up here. In 1949, they finally installed plumbing, and so we have a bathroom back in here. So they made the living area a bedroom and a bathroom. And this is where our keepers stay. This is one of the areas where our keepers stay. So when they come and serve at the lighthouse. And then we also house keepers in the front 2 bedrooms as well. One of the last head keepers up here, he had 2 stepsons, and the 2 stepsons, one of their bedrooms was the one we were just in, and then the living area that we have set up as a living area, he said was his bedroom over here, and they kept the front 2 bedrooms for the lighthouse keeper inspector and any other Coast Guard person that would come for inspection and want to stay the night. So they were the guest room up here, so because Mom and Dad still slept downstairs. This we now have set up as our living area, and as you can see, this is where the wall stopped for the first when it was first built. After 1909, they installed the fog signal building. By 1913, they realized that they really needed one more keeper, and so they had to put an addition on. And so that's what we're going to walk into. We're going to walk into the addition. This is the kitchen here, the kitchen area here. So, and this now serves as our kitchen for our keepers who come and stay here. And then back here we have our living room area back here. And then with our bathroom and bedroom back in here as well. So the fog signal person and his wife would live up here in this half of the house. And now our keepers stay up here. So when you stay here as a keeper, there are 2 living areas for the keepers. We house anywhere from 5 to 8 people. And a lot of fun times are had around the kitchen table playing games and jigsaw puzzles out here in the living areas. And lots of reading gets done on the nice quiet nights that you have out here. We walk down the stairs, and now we're back on the main floor, and this is where the assistant keeper and their families would live. This is the living room, and we have a kitchen right off from the living room here. Just beautiful views in the morning. We have our full bathroom on the side here. One of the last assistant keepers here, he lived, I've talked to the son who lived here, and mom and dad's room was right off here, from the kitchen here, which now we kind of house as our office, and but this is where mom and dad slept. They had 3 kids in the family, 2 boys and a girl. So the boys shared the bedroom. And sister got to sleep out in the living area. So they were excited when Dad became the head keeper and they got to move upstairs, got to move to the other side with all the bedrooms. That was like. Certainly hope that you've enjoyed your virtual tour of the Big Sable Point Lighthouse. I'm Peter Manting. I'm the Executive Director of the Sable Point Lighthouse Keepers, and Dave Dietrich has been alongside of me as our Lighthouse Keeper today, directing you through this tour. We are closed for the 2020 season, and that's why we're doing our virtual videos, so that you can at least see a little bit of what you missed for 2020. And then in 2021, we hope that you'll come back out and see us in person. So we have a Keepers program that we hope that you will be able to take advantage of and come and stay with us for 2 weeks out at Big Sable Point Lighthouse and be a volunteer keeper. And so we invite you to check that out as well. And you can find all that information on our website too. So until we see you here at Big Sable Point Lighthouse, I'm Peter Manting, and for the Sable Point Lighthouse Keepers Association, I want to wish you a good day.